Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 69th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode of Homebrew Review, we have something a little bit different, a little bit special that we're going to do today. Yes, internet numbers! But we do have a very unique homebrew today. So normally we get homebrew items, weapons, races, subclasses, typically things that are somewhat universal. Some of these have come with really, really good background lore, like pretty much anything submitted by Cosmic, or especially like something like Kintsugi's Resolve. So a lot of these things have had really, really steeped in lore, but for the most part, the items that we've seen are relatively universal and relatively usable by most people, give or take if your own modifications. Today, what we're going to be doing is something a little bit different. We have submitted to us, I guess what we're going to be calling a setting lore is basically what this is. It is a little bit of history from a location based in a specific setting from one of our viewers, Bobicus. And he wanted to send this to us and just kind of see how we felt about it, what our opinions were. I think he might have a couple questions that Kage has had that is holding on to us, or they're going to just kind of be in there. So yeah, we're going to kind of tackle this similar to how we do normal homebrew review. We're going to go over each section one by one. We're going to read the whole section first and then tackle each one. We're going to give our thoughts and opinions, kind of knee-jerk reactions, maybe some, inspirations on what we might do with it, and then hopefully answer any questions Babakis has, either that he gave to Kage previously or that he'll post in chat. And then since this is not something that will be usable by me, because I don't use other people's lore, it's, I don't know if we're going to do a high point rating or not. We're going to see once we're done with reading it, if it applies, like if something like this can apply, depends upon the context that we get. And then same thing is probably going to happen with the Goblin Clan when we get that in one in the future as well. So these are going to be kind of some special ones, something unique, something new. We're giving that a try. You know what? It's episode 69. Let's get right to it. Let me bring Kage in because I know that he is just dying to say hello. How are you doing?
I am excited to be here as always. Back in the studio. This is going to be kind of cool. It's definitely very different. I'm excited to see how it goes. I really feel like some of the best inspiration that we have here comes from lore, comes from the history behind things, and I think that it's going to be interesting. So just as a quick side note, I was talking with Bobicus about this, and this is actually something that he had originally created for somebody else, but it was something that he ended up adopting into his own lore, and so it's something that I'm very excited to see what we end up coming up with.
So that's actually funny. So tangent story. Learning that it would be kind of nice to make sure people can have time to get in. So quick little tangent story. That's funny that you bring that up because there is something quite paramount in my realm that I guess you could say wasn't originally meant for my realm. So early in the stages when I was still developing High Point and when I still hadn't figured out 100% of everything, but I was really in my creative zone of just development. This was early on when
this a little bit.
I don't think I brought this up yet, but early on when I was developing High Point, and early back when Lucifer first started DMing, he was trying to experiment with building out his own setting. I think he wanted a town, and so he wanted to do a collaboration with it. So I think he had a map. I don't know if he printed the map or made the map, but he ended up having a map and a couple of things that he knew that he wanted, but he wanted a lot of like the details hammered out. So I offered to kind of develop something for him, and for the most part, it was taking the NPCs that he wanted in there, adding a few of my own, developing like factions, who controlled what, where the divinity factions would be, where the local factions would be, and just kind of layering it out to where he could look at the map, have zones, and basically be like, depending on where they go, he knows what NPCs to use. He would know what attitudes to use, what kind of confrontations to have with the with the players, things that they would find there. So it was a lot of like, hey, in this zone, there's like 3 major things that they'll find. You know what I mean? There's this church, there's this particular well of note, and here's some notes about it. And then there's this NPC, and that's it. Like everything else is residential. And then in the market, there's 7 notable things, and then there's just any other shop like that. So it was kind of like that. It was breaking it out and doing all of that. But it was more so in a lot of the things that I took my own creative spin on, that kind of went, I think, beyond the scope of what he was interested in, because he just kind of gave me a map and wanted just like, some placeholders, some pinpoints, and some stuff. I ended up creating probably way more than necessary in terms of the hierarchy of certain levels of the NPCs and certain factions. I even added to the map, making a very complicated like defense system, because there's this river. It was like this river that flowed to the city, and then like it like went into the city and then split into like an eye, and then came back together and then left the city. So the city was like in
that's kind of
3
cool.
sections. It was
and
like
there was a little inlet in the center.
Yeah, so I had like had this whole like this complicated system for like how the naval works went and how like the flows would go and all of that. But yeah, anyway, it ended up not getting used. He ended up going, I think that was also when he transitioned into doing the Theria setting. Bob, in case you're here, good. So I think that's when he transitioned to doing Theria instead and trying to tackle his own. So I always had the documents. I've just always had them lying there for the longest time. Never did anything with them because at first I was like, okay, that was cool. That was fun. Maybe he'll want them back later. But it never kind of went anywhere until High Point continued to develop, and a lot of those same ideas that I had thrown in there started to creep up, like certain factions that I wanted, certain certain specific NPCs that I wanted, and it ended up turning out that several of the creations that I made for that particular setting are now like prominent, like cornerstones to High Point.
Interesting.
So it's just those cornerstones would have eventually evolved, but the ones that are specifically there specifically are because of an abandoned campaign setting that never saw the light of day for someone else. So technically, this is the closest I've ever come to breaking my rule of not using another DM, because I don't use as much as I can. It's like I don't mind getting inspired by other DMs,
right?
But like I try not to directly say like,
hey, that thing you created, I want it.
Yeah, especially if it's like, again, like the Kintsugi's Resolve. Like,
yeah,
that is so specific to like a character you played and everything else like that. I mean, a ruling on a rule saying, hey, I like how to do death saves like this, and being like, oh, I'm going to do that too. Like, that's one thing. I don't mind. That's not really intellectual property theft. That's creativity. That's the whole point of the sharing and community.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to be like, hey, I have this weapon, it's called this for this character, and you're like, oh yeah, cool. Hey guys, in my game now I have this character who's called this, and he has this and you basically, that is what I try not to do in terms of, I like to have as much of anything that's, I guess, narrative or plot based is, I guess, what I don't take.
Yeah.
So if that makes more sense, like if it's a good weapon, if it's a good item, if it's a good mechanical ruling, and it works with everything else, I don't mind the sharing and the adapting. But if it's like lore narration based, it's like I really want that. That's what I learned.
You want it to be unique for you in your realm and what. But I mean, a lot of the stuff you took was stuff that you created, right? And yeah, it came
and again,
from
a lot of the inspirations in terms of like my plot line were all of my own characters. It's all of my own IP in terms of that stuff. All of that I created. And again, I know for a fact that there's probably plenty of rules that I have that I call High Point rules that are like that I call basically my own. I'm sure there's probably plenty, if I wrote them all down, that were direct ripoffs from my whether I knew it or not. Those were my DM's rulings that weren't part of the book, right? Because I mean, it's like, again, I don't memorize the books, and there's no way I can go. I'm not going to read the book and be like, oh, my ruling's different. That must have been his. That, it's like I know for a fact I'm inspired by so many different things. But I try, again, for me, that's why, I mean, if you've ever noticed, I don't talk about the realm that Zenith came from, like the one that I actually took the character from, that IP from. I don't talk about it. I don't want to take on the responsibility of discussing what isn't mine. Zenith was mine. What I did to get out of that of his setting was mine. All of that IP, all of that story, that narrative is mine. Beyond that, the only thing I took were things that my character could take, which are basically anything, his memories, his understandings, his knowledge. But I try to leave, I don't use characters, I don't use locations. I try not to use anything from other IPs where I consider other IPs that I've played in. You know what I mean?
What about when it comes to the history of who was Zenith before Zenith?
Oh, Dice.
Dice, yes.
Still my IP and still my character.
So, like, where he came from, where his home was, like, those locations, like, technically those existed in
Those exist in his memory, but those don't get spoken. Those are of, of a land unknown. It basically, for all intents and purposes, it's like those places don't exist to anything in High Point.
I mean, that's, yeah.
So, it's like the only person that would make sense to would be Zenith and Dice themselves. Anybody else would not really have any comprehension, so bringing those up doesn't have a context. So the point is, it's the time before time. It was the life before life,
right?
It was the time before High Point. And again, it's just more of a respect thing. It's not even I won't speak of it. It's just I stopped gaming with that group. I wanted to keep my IPs because I was already developing High Point at the time, but I wanted to respectfully be able to take my IP. So I came up with what I think is an awesome story. By the way, I love the Cataclysm story.
I've been slowly learning as much as I can about it.
And
so
I don't know if you actually got to watch the whole conclusion of all the episodes of the Cataclysm yet. If you've actually got to sit through and listen to all of the the Cataclysm NPCs, the witnesses, all of the whole history of High Point. I guess it's like just the origins of High Point. I guess it's just kind of like a 5-episode series.
It's so good.
But yeah, it was, it's a lot of fun. And yeah, it is a fine line between what you could call taking from somebody else. Like I said, I'm very open to sharing ideas. I try to draw the line, if I can, around narrative, plot, things that are very specific to something that they hold as their IP.
Yes.
Everything else is just kind of one of those, if you've created a spell from scratch, I get stealing it word for word, but the idea that a spell could work in a certain way, that's kind of to me, it's more of an open idea, because there's nothing from stopping someone else coming up with that idea.
To be honest, if you're talking about rule sets and all stuff like that, even just creating a homebrew weapon, all of that stuff, while it is phenomenal that person came up with it in the first place, right? But they are putting something together based upon rules that was created by somebody else. So you're just taking pieces of a puzzle and putting them together in a unique way, and that can spawn a lot of other things. But being the person to create an actual puzzle piece, that's different.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you're talking about, is you guys are laying the foundation for something, for a world, for a setting, for lore, for things to be created from, right? You can have the tools and all that stuff, but again, I feel a lot of that is what we're meant to share. I mean, that's what we're doing with a lot of this homebrew review stuff. That's all of the balancing, the mindsets, how you put one piece. All of that kind of stuff is just our take on...
It's open table sharing, not to say this is how you should do it.
Yeah.
And it's not in the hopes that you'll do what we say. But again, it's just that here's another perspective, hopefully that gives you a new insight. Whether that, again, like we've said it before, whether that makes you concrete in your new ideas and say, oh, no, now that I've heard all of your ideas, I know for a fact my idea is the way I want to go. That's great too. as long as we can help you get to what you want and what you select as the best. That's always the goal, right?
Facts.
So glad to see Bobby Kiss here. Thank you so much for showing up. We always want to kind of give people time, especially if it's their item for the day. Cosmic, also great to see you in chat. Looking forward to next Mondays. Of course he is. I'm actually really looking forward to next Mondays. It's his scythe, so that's going to be really fantastic.
Interesting. Yes, yes.
And Adventurology was the first here today. Cosmic, you're slacking, man. All right.
This is a good deal. Very excited.
No, we have a good crowd today. So we are going to get right into it, y'all. Hang on. Gotta mess with my microphone. Okay, so we are going to be doing this guy here today. So we have the Doluk Dwarves and Jakkat. I hope I am saying that correctly. I don't know if Babakis would even be able to correct me.
Do they have like voice? Can you like drop voice in there?
But there wouldn't really be like a voice like command that they could like record or anything.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
Let me know if I'm heck if I know. So
right.
Not even Babakis knows what we're supposed to say. So that's what we're calling it. We are calling it the Doluk Dwarves and Jakkat. We recognize this as a setting lore. You were saying that it is a town, like a location.
So the way he put it when we were talking about it earlier is that it's more of like the history of a city.
History. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why we called it lore. Is okay. So it's not just the setting, but it's the whole like process of it. Okay. I got to sit way back here. Here we go. Yo, what's up? All right. All right, so I guess we're just going to get into this. Like I said, I'm not really sure if this will be able to get a high point. I mean, we'll just kind of see. Maybe we'll try to do it from the point of view of, do I think it's gameable? As like from a high point of view, or maybe I'll give it a high point rating from the point of view of like, creativity, inspiration, kind of like how I normally do, and then maybe like playability, like how much I as a player. So again, we could still try to give it a high point. It could still go up. Just trying to think of like, again, because it's not like an item, so it's not like something that you would normally be like, hey, here's a type of sword that anybody can kind of like, mix and match. This is very specific, so I don't really know how you would judge that. But I think judging it on playability as a player, how much you would like to be in this setting, how much you want to create a character in it. Maybe I'll lean towards that, so we can give it a proper rating. But yeah, without further ado, let me grab some water and we will jump right into it.
Jump on it.
Ley lines, and I think the most interesting part of the design of the city, but I didn't flesh them out as much as I'd like. Oh, okay.
Ley lines again reminds me of Genshin Impact.
And then one little quick thing that we're going to be doing this time around as well is, because of the way that this is structured out, as you can see, a lot of information that we have to go through. So we are going to be focusing on reading through an entire section before we begin our open discussion. We'll try to make some notes or anything, or just mentally be aware of what we need to say. But this way it'll stop a lot of the larger tangents that will happen, and then we hopefully will be able to get through this in a relatively good amount of time today. All right. Doluk Dwarves and Jakkat. Description. The Doluk Dwarves were an early civilization, back when the Dwarves had yet learned to farm the interiors of the mountain before they discovered the horrors underneath the rock. From the beginning, the Doluk Dwarves inhabited the Doluk Mountains and ruled over the barbarian tribes of kobolds, lizard folk, hobgoblins, and humans, deploying the first professional armies. A Byzantine system of diplomatic deals, tributes, marriages, and wars maintained their political and cultural influence over the Doluk foothills. This concentration of wealth and power was maintained even as their territorial influences shrunk to their unassailable mountain homes. It was in this environment that the Jakkat, now known as the blood tax, was first established.
Now known as the what? The blood tax?
Yes. It was in this environment that Jakkat, now known as the blood tax, was first established. Jakkat was originally conceived as a right of return for the half-bloods of dwarven lineage, allowing those born of diplomatic marriages to return to the mountain homes with their retainers. These half-bloods and their retainers were strictly, or were, these half-bloods and their retainers were restricted to a military life, as were their children in return, forming the Jack core of the Dwarven army. This changed in the year. I'm assuming that will be in
Right.
type of year, but this all changed in the year of when the Doluk Dwarves. Oh, this all changed in the year the Doluk Dwarves era of Underdark expansion. So I don't know if there's supposed to be a year number there.
I think there's going to be like a to be determined one. Like there's not really.
All right.
Yeah.
But in that year, the Doluk Dwarves era of Underdark expansion, although the Dwerger, I always have problems with that one.
I think it's the Duergar.
Although the Duergar and Drow are treacherous trade partners, they're near monopolistic control on the strange substances and arcane artifacts of the Underdark make the occasional trade mission or raiding party worth the Doluk Dwarves' while, and the Doluk Dwarves grew massively in wealth and power in this era. However, the near-consistent violence of the Underdark strained the Dwarves' military beyond its capacity, and the Jakkat was expanded. The Jakkat became a mandatory tribute of children and young adults required of all subjugated and allied tribes in the Dog Mountains and foothills. In return, those tribes that paid Jakkat were given access to some of the glittering riches of the Underdark. The Hobgoblin of the Dog Mountains created a great slaver. The Hobgoblins of the Doluk Mountains created a great slaver empire in this era, delivering great hordes of creatures in payment for Jakkat, and receiving great wealth and prestige among the Doluk Dwarves. Wow, that is a lot to unpack. Okay, so.
That's some shit.
Okay, so right off the bat, let's tackle some of the best parts about it and kind of the biggest things. First off, taking a great spin with the time before time concept. You know, going back before they were known for what they were known for. I love those concepts. I love digging up a origin lore of your own, even though again it's kind of like what I've talked about with High Point. Having my own way of describing how High Point was created using what is written, but even though it diverges, it still ends up the same. And similar to this, being able to have that origin lore, but still it comes and funnels down into the familiar, so it's not so abnormal and so personally created that it feels like it's like not real, like a homebrew item, and it just makes it like, okay, I can get on board with this. I can get on board very easily with what they were before Dwarves, and the concepts. Okay, so then again, going right into the next one, the Jakkat, the blood tax. Wow, such a. I mean, not only does it feel correct, this type of lore, I don't mean for dwarves, but just this concept of having this authoritative type of clan, these people, this civilization that ruled over like kobolds and lizard folk, and then eventually expanded to the point to where they made treaties and expanded their empire and melded into other empires, right? Didn't just kill and move, but it blended in, and then it makes perfect sense to have this concept of purity, right? There's no doubt about anything about that. The concept of purity, and then just jumping to having this concept of being able to come back with a ritual, this blood tax of being able to be accepted back, like that just feels right.
I swear there was some. Oh, isn't that? I don't know if you watched the Mandalorian, where the dude was like kind of he kind of like left the way or whatever, and he like was kind of exercised from being the Mandalorian, but in order to go back and become one again, he had to go and like bathe in these waters back on their homeworld, but their homeworld had been taken over, so they said it was impossible for him to come back. But he was like, forget that, I'm gonna find a way to go do it anyways, and he went and
yeah,
I love that.
Just this concept doesn't feel at all foreign. It feels right at home with what we've described so far. And then again, just thinking of it linear or layer, not linearly, but in layers. We've always talked about this every time we talk about why we like certain lore, like why we like cosmics lore and things of that sort, is layers. So having the layers of what they were, why the blood tax happened because of the expansion into, other diplomatic purposes, right? They recognized, instead of just being warlike, instead of just taking over and killing, let's marry out. Let's actually make alliances. But that spreads us thin. So let's make the strongest come back, but let's make them worthy of it, right? Like, these are all things that make absolute sense. Then adding in this era of expansion, of great wealth, and then of also more thinning out, to then bring, again, that whole circular motion, right? You're not creating these eras where drastically different things are happening. It's all in that progress of, we were great, we expanded, we thinned out. We needed to bring people back in a narrow focus. Now we're great, we expanded, now we're thinned out. Now we kind of need a less narrow focus to get people back, right? But they're using the same technique. It's not like a new method was created. It's still the same traditional technique, which makes sense, right? This is a story I believe. I absolutely believe this. It feels
like it moves in the... It's consistent direction.
Yeah, it's balanced. It makes sense. It's not too much information. We're not getting inundated with the rites and rituals and why people can and can't do the... No. It's just, you have a great civilization. They've gone through these ups and downs. This rite of passage was created in order to recognize the best of those that are no longer pure, because of course they had it. I mean, everyone understands a sense of purity, right? Like, I don't mean understand it in the sense of you believe in it, but when you think of a warlike civilization, or you think of any great civilization that ruled, you understand that they had a sense of purity, right? Sense of purity is very common in these mindsets. So again, I probably misspoke there. Don't want that to be clipped incorrectly.
No, I got you.
But the mindset of, you believe it. The need for that sense of purity, you absolutely believe it. And what they did with it, I believe all of this. And then being able to, so then going into so bad to the point to where they made it mandatory. Like, basically, if you are within our sphere of influence and you have anything, you will send your people for this. So now they're just basically not even accepting half-bloods. Now it's just anybody goes through this and you're considered our people, which again is just a great way to represent the changes of what a name means, right? Mm-hmm. Like, when you say, I am, a Doluk, 100 years from now, that could be an elf. That could be a human, could say that they're Doluk. But this is the lore of what a Doluk was. It was a type of person. It was a type of civilization that had to eventually absorb others and allow them the title. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens, right? Like, there's a certain level of, your name usually starts with like your lineage, your ethnicity, your culture, but give it a couple hundred years and people who who really technically don't fit the original method are able to call themselves that, right? Like, because now all of a sudden what used to be this country has expanded 5 countries over. So people 5 countries over are now one of you, even though that's not technically what you were originally, because you were born, like there's those
but
nuances.
It always changes, and
that's the idea of this, is like it leads to this,
it's showing
really
that evolution over time.
And and again, it leads to a really a believable story, and it leads into something that is actually like, I can work with that. You know what I mean? It's not so much I'm just going to give you exact details and you can't change out of this. I like lore that is highlighted, like highlightable lore, where it's kind of like bullet point, and you can fill in the details as needed. But this is a great way to captivate players, captivate your audience, get across what you want to get across without inundating them with too many details. but there's room for questions. You know what I mean? Like, well,
Yeah.
what, of course, my first thing is, well, what is the Jakkat? What do you have to go through? What do you have to do to go through it? Like, there's all these, like, there's reasons now I want to understand more about these people instead of just being like, I'm bored. Like, stop giving me information. What does it matter? What's the context of this? It's given just enough to be like, okay, I understand it. I believe it. And I kind of want to know a little bit more.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if that's all I got, if that's all that there was, if there was just in-game a manuscript and this is all that there was from some scholar who studied them, it'd be like, damn, that's but intriguing. I'm holding on to this.
It's juicy and it gives you some place to go. It doesn't just like leave you high and dry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's certainly Jack at this point. I don't know if they'd called themselves Doluk yet, but that's a good point. Oh, okay. So right now, so the Doluk were just the Dwarven civilization. The Jakkat was the rite of passage to allow half-bloods in. Eventually, due to thinning out, anybody, under their sphere could do this. But those that went through the Jakkat, known as the blood tax, are called Jack, or the Jack.
Right.
So
okay.
They would not. So what Bobby Kiss is mentioning in chat is that at this point, they themselves would not consider themselves like Doluk. But my point being, like, maybe in 100, 200 years in the future, maybe it goes from being Jack, I'm a Jack, to we're just all Doluk.
Right.
So, he's saying that might be a good point. Not exactly what he was going for, but that's what I think of when I'm dealing with this kind of lore. There's a lot you could work with this. So wow, I'm already intrigued. I love that. I don't even know what we've really dived into. Was that the Jakkat? Were we just setting up for the Jack, or were we looking at just the Doluk dwarves? Like, we kind of got a lot, but I don't feel inundated. I'm happy to keep going. So yeah, so far this is fantastic. Let's move on. Grush. The Grush River originates in the Doluk Mountains, originating from a yet unexplored Underdark aquifer that geysers into the Doluk Mountains and then carves subterranean and above-ground paths to the Nullet Sea to the east and to the Wakiki Sea to the west. The Grush River has formed many channels, and the aquifer's moods are complex. There's no telling if a channel formed by dozens of tributaries this year. Hang on, I think I don't have the right cadence for that one. So the Grush River has formed many channels, and the aquifer's moods are complex. There's no telling if a channel formed by dozens of tributaries this year may run dry the next. Oh, okay. So there's no telling. They're complex. There's no telling. A channel could be formed by dozens of tributaries this year, and then may run dry the next. I think that's the idea.
Got you. Yeah.
So it's ever ebbing and flowing, constantly
changing, and you don't know whether it's going to be the same way next year as it is this year.
Gotcha. Okay. It is for this reason that all flowing water in the Doluk Mountains is said to be from the River Grush, regardless of what path it takes or which sea it ends up in. The lizard folk are masters of the Grush River, a confederacy of tribes that continually migrate, chasing after new springs of the Gush aquifer that have broken to the surface, living off of the strange fish that survive in the Underdark's waters before they are carried forth to the surface. This is... Okay, so again, just a great way to break this out. So I'm already, before I even understood what we're doing, it's almost like, again, if I'm thinking about this in game, I'm thinking of someone who is like an archaeologist, and we're finding like his notebook along the way, or we're reading his journal, and these are the things that he found. Or this is just like you bought a travel guide to somewhere, and it's like, here's your map, and here's some specifics. Here's the people of this town, right? Here's a river that's nearby. Like, this reads exactly like what you would expect. I mean, I like literally, I could in-game imagine our players just literally sit next to a river with like this written on like a board, just on like a plaque, and they're just reading this like, oh, that's what this place is. Like, you know what I mean? It literally feels like a nature walk plaque.
Interesting.
And I like that because, again, it's giving exactly what you need. It's giving... I didn't even need a description of what it looks like. You know what I mean? I don't need this elaborate, illusionary description. This gives me everything I need. This is a river of an unknown origin. It ebbs, it flows, it changes, it comes here one year, it's gone the next. It spurts out of the ground out of nowhere. It comes out, from, up under something that just suddenly it's, now flooded and then it's gone. It's coming out the side of certain cavern walls. One cave that was accessible one year is now completely flooded the next. Just that tells me everything I need to know. And then it tells me a little bit about its influence on the locals, right? Having the lizard folk be masters of it.
I think that's the coolest thing.
It.
Like, imagine this like unknown river, and then you are just this like, I imagine like a ranger just running around chasing after this river, like a tornado hunter or something like that, trying to predict or figure out where the river's gonna flow this year. Like, nobody ever knows, but you know before anybody else does, because you can see the signs, you can feel the vibrations in the underdark, and it sounds like some way cool. I'm feeling it.
Okay, so so it's that's cool. Like let's see. So so it gives a good lore for it. So I think the only thing that I would add is maybe one more paragraph. I would maybe add one more paragraph. Not so much the illusionary one. Or the illustrative. I said illusionary. The illustrative. I don't necessarily need an amazing illustration, but it does lack context to the setting. Like, it gives me a really good idea of what I'm dealing with, but is this all happening above a waterfall? And then there's a main, because we do know that it has the aquifers it goes east and west, right? So we know it goes east and west. But having an idea of, are those east and west rivers fed from a like single waterfall that above that all of this is happening? Is it that these rivers shift, from like one angle to the next? Like, just from my point of view, this is all great information for the setting, but it doesn't allow me to say, okay, I can see it. And I don't need a lot of detail for that. I don't need a lot. It gives me an idea of what it is and what it gives like, oh, okay, so there's this river that does all of this cool stuff. But as a D&D player, I have really no idea what I'm looking at.
Right.
So even just 2 sentences of just a length or like maybe a width, how wide the 2 rivers are, and then exactly how all of this mess spills into them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because this is constantly ebbing and flowing, but you do have these 2 kind of consistent rivers. Just having a little context of the size of those rivers and how this spills into it, and maybe even just like the size and shape of the area that it says. Like, this is a 3-mile area that the water can move around in. Just to give me a little bit of, if I'm standing near this town or this mountain top, how is this water actually flowing off the mountain?
Right. Because
you can imagine, like, is this a very tall mountain? Is this like Mount Everest?
It's like a geyser like spewing out of it, or is it just trickling and flowing through?
When I heard the geyser, my thought is that it's inside the mountain. So there's water way down. So you have the mountain up here, you have water way down here, and then there's a geyser that shoots up into this mountain, and then it, basically as it shoots up into the mountain, it bleeds out the mountain. And one year, all the water's coming out this side of the mountain. And then the next year, this dries up, and then water's coming out this side of the mountain.
Right.
So I'm imagining not so much like flat land waters just flowing like rivers. I'm imagining this like mountain range where one year, you've seen, like driving along the highway, if you're driving along the wet season, you see a waterfall, and you drive, in the dry season, there's no waterfall. I imagine it's like that, but that waterfall never comes back.
Yes.
It'll be somewhere else, maybe on the other side of the freeway. So I'm just imagining it's not really like waterways showing up, but just like if you were imagining driving down the highway and then, in the mountains, and then just suddenly, you never seen water spew out of there before, but now it's just spewing out and trickling. But there are 2 main water catches at the base that's going east and west.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm envisioning, but a sentence or 2 to clear that up,
I get you,
would be preferable, but not necessarily, because again, this is a guide. This is
right.
like, again, if you think about this from a guide, even a guide wouldn't tell you what the river looks like. Once you show up, you'll see what it looks like. So it's more of to help people put themselves in the position, but at the same time, it doesn't need it.
That's fair.
There'd be a map that did the classic map marker's mistake of dividing. So there was a map that did the classic map marker's mistake of dividing the continent into two by a river. That's what inspired this river. Okay, nice. I did. I mean, that's the main concept of like the main area of High Point. It's basically like four continents.
Yep.
That are separated by two rivers that intersect.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know if that's a mistake, but a classic map maker's mistake. So it's like, do you mean like you made the mistake as the map maker and DM, or are you saying like lore wise there was a mistake made and it shows on the map? Yeah, I'm really curious what that means. Like, but yeah, so Grush River, I like it. I like these names too, like Grush, like Russian River. It sounds guttural. It sounds like Grussian River.
Yes.
Like, it sounds like what a dwarf would say. It sounds like what a warmongering thing would say. I did not make the map. This was somebody else's. Oh yeah, so this was that's right. This was originally for someone else's whole build.
So just in case before you move on, so I don't know if you can see, but in this next section,
I already saw it.
The sentence.
I can read it.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
I did create a new file if you want it to look better, but if you can read it fine, then
yeah,
we'll make it work.
That's no big deal. I was looking at that when I was talking a second ago.
I was like, dang it.
Yeah. So far so good. That again, naming structure is on point.
Love it.
All right. As I say that, now I struggle. The Dalgaruum in the current era. So the Dalgaruum, we did notice that your original file was named Dalgaruum and the Jakkat, but it is the Doluk Dwarves and the Jakkat. So is the Dalgaruum, is that something different, or is that like was that the Doluk's original name? Just because immediately next start is all who wish to trade with the Doluk Dwarves must pay the Jakkat. So I'm just like, where did the Dalgaruum
is the city?
Oh, cool. Okay, so we're in the city of Dalgaruum, and
the Doluk
Dwarves live here. The Grush River's nearby. Okay, so in the current era, Dalgaruum, the city, here's how it is in the current era. So as we've known. The story so far. The Doluk were a great civilization. They ruled over people. They became great and powerful. They understood the benefit of expansion. So they not only expanded by territory and by wiping people out, but they expanded by marriages, by allyship, by civilizing themselves, right? Like spreading themselves through other civilizations, and melting pot themselves. This created a shortage of people, kind of thinning themselves out, because of course anybody in that position typically looks at purity as an important part. So then they created the Jakkat, a ritual to allow people of the best of the half-bloods basically to come back. Then, of course, over time, they became powerful and wealthy again, thinned out even more, then needed this to be allowed to be done by anybody that they deemed worthy. So not just half-bloods, but any kind of delineation. And then it became so dire so that they needed to force people who worked with them, or that anybody under their delineation or their sphere of influence was basically kind of like forced into military, servitude, kind of like a forced military ship. So now, that's been the history up until now. Now, all who wish to trade with the Doluk Dwarves must pay the Jakkat. So now it's no longer everybody that is under their control. It's now an isolationist issue. It's if you even want to deal with us, you have to become one of us. Like, you have to pay this toll to even be part of us. Like,
now, is it like, do you have to become one, or do you just have to like pay them, like they're extorting them in order to?
It says the Doluk Dwarves must. So all who wish to trade with the Doluk Dwarves must pay Jakkat. Jakkat was the ritual. The Jek are the ones that took the ritual. So it sounds like they've gone so deep that it's like, if you want to trade with us, pay the blood tax.
Oh,
you pay the Jakkat to even deal with us. If not, get out. So now they've gone full isolationist. So again, I'm believing this. They're going through all of these amazing cycles of a civilization of, they got so war hungry, they got so spread out, they got so desperate, and now it's it's gotten to the point to where even though they're no longer just the Doluk dwarves anymore, now that it's just all this civilizations of all of these different types of people, and most of them are pretty much Jek now. Most of them probably aren't even Doluk anymore. The majority of them are going to be Jek. The idea that, again, that it all started with purity. Remember, the Doluk started with purity. The Jek became a way to be accepted, and then the Jek probably were treated badly, kind of did what you do. You took ownership of what you are, even though people treated you badly. And now, because they're the majority, now that they've probably taken over, now it's that back to that puritanism of, no, we had, like, to get
now
here, we had to be a Jek. So no, prove to me that you're worthy just as I was. I had to prove I was worthy. You know what I mean? It's that mindset of beam are equal. So it's almost a bastardized version of what they thought of becoming equal, but now it's like almost to the extreme.
That's crazy.
Babakis adds, I say the empire in one of the next sentences. It's the kingdom. Okay, excellent. Kingdom of Leonos. All right, so all that wish to trade with the Doluk dwarves must pay the Jakkat. There is no issue for the kingdom of There's no issue for the kingdom. Next is there's... Oh, you say empire. Okay, so I just need to keep saying kingdom. Okay. There's no issue for the kingdom of Leonis. Wow, I swear I can talk. I just said it. Leonios. There is no issue for the kingdom of Leonios, rich with slaves, and their relationship with the Doluk dwarves is a profitable one. Oh, this is no issue. That's the word I said wrong. So this is no issue for the kingdom of Leonios, which rich in slaves and the relationship with the Doluk dwarves is profitable one. The kingdom claims dominion over the hobgoblin and human trade city of Dalgarum and all of the land above the Doluk dwarves. Just underneath Dalgarum is the dwarven-run canal city of Muragal. The Doluk dwarves retain their relative independence and concern themselves with the affairs of the mountains. In the current era, small tribes of lizard folk live in isolated pockets underground, only migrating when the river abandons their home. Okay, so right now, again, major isolationism. There's a kingdom of Leonios that doesn't care because they have plenty of slaves. There's a profitable relationship going on, so they don't care about having people having to pay the Jek to deal with them. So this city is now hobgoblin and human run. So this city isn't even run by the Doluk dwarves. The dwarves are basically maintain themselves within the city, kind of basically just allowing everybody else to do whatever they want, kind of recluse into the city themselves or into the mountains themselves, and it doesn't seem like they're that politically motivated to deal with what they're dealing outside the mountains, right?
Right.
So it's almost as if what we were saying before, where the Doluk dwarves got to this great wealth, they used the Jakkat to sustain themselves, and then at one point the Doluk dwarves were doing fine, but the Jakkat, the whole thing was needing more people. So that continued and got overboard, but it almost sounds like, so it's the Jek who went overboard. They went overboard with their whole ritual, and now this hobgoblin human-run city full of Jek is like isolationism. You have to pay the toll or come in, where the Doluk dwarves were like, yeah, you guys just
you do whatever the fuck you want.
That's really cool, guys. Like, hey, we'll keep our half-bloods, our people, and we'll keep us. We're gonna go back in the mountains, and you have fun in the town. So it's almost like the Jek were like, because the Jek were almost like you think the Jek were no longer needed, but they were massive,
right?
So if they took over this town, the Doluk dwarves stayed, in the mountains, mostly isolated, still preserving their, what am I thinking of? Wow, I was just saying it earlier.
The like economic structure.
Well, no, just their purity. There we go. That's
okay. Yeah,
like they'll be able to go back in there, remain their purity, not intermix too much, right? Because they still have the half bloods that they'll accept. but it's almost like the Jakkat just took over
So
and just became like a society thing.
Bobicus says that the dwarves at this point had completely abandoned any above ground claims.
So yeah, so it's like the Jakkat just almost became unmanageable, and they were like, we don't need all of this anymore. We're gonna go back to just being us, and y'all just do it. The Jakkat are still needed, while the overground territory has shrunken and been claimed by the Leonis. The Doluk have expanded greatly in the... Oh, okay. So it's just a mitigation of land ownership. They basically don't want anything on the surface. The Jakkat are there to maintain what like barriers on the surface, but the Doluk are basically all about what's inside the mountain in the Underdark. So, okay. So the Jakkat are kind of like their buffer zone. That's interesting. But it does sound like they're kind of getting kind of crazy outside. You know what I mean? Like that buffer zone's kind of taking over almost. Again, this is the lore that I'm kind of thinking of, like how it would work.
Right.
It's almost like the Doluk dwarves are like, yeah, you guys keep that buffer zone, but that buffer zone isn't really like tightly managed. So it's kind of just taking on a form of its own.
He's like, you guys do whatever you want because I'm kind of tired of dealing with you.
Yeah, it's like we're just gonna keep going deeper into the Underdark and taking over. You guys just maintain that buffer, and we don't really care. But stay there, do your job, however you see fit. Interesting. Okay. So Murrugal, we just got. So Murrugal is the dwarven-run canal city underneath the town. Okay. So Murrugal is the dwarven city of canals. There are 5 main districts: Gil, workshops and manufactories; Booth, forges and arcane; Sharl, government and guilds; Ola, trade and docks; and Takga, agricultural and outskirts. Or agricultural outskirts. Okay, so they do have like some agricultural outsides. Okay, so the Canal City... Is the Canal City officially in the Underdark, Babakis? Or is this like their kind of like buffer zone before it's the official Underdark? I'm really curious about that. But I do like that. And again, I don't think that's... If you're not really going for anything, like, again, if you have a map, you kind of already know what it looks like, or you kind of have an idea of what the layout is. So yeah, so that's good. I like that it just has a breakout of districts. Maybe notable figures could be a good thing to add here. You know, like maybe just 1 or 2 notable NPCs from each location. But yeah, no, that's so workshops, factories, forges, magic, government, guilds, trade, docks, agricultural. Is it missing any? Like, what else would you expect? I mean, it is underground, but what else would you expect? I don't think there's anything really missing. It has all the standard stuff. Yeah. Where would, like, I guess in the arcane, I don't know if this setting has any like divine or divinity issues. But you could
like
have like
churches or whatever, some religious practices or...
Okay, so this is just the mountain. This is the buffer zone. Okay, so this is the buffer zone before the official Underdark. Okay. All right, so Gil, workshops in the factories, manufacturing. High volumes of high-pressure water are centrally supplied to the factory district. Individual dwarven workshops host a bevy of hydraulic machines, and hydraulic miniaturization is commonplace, allowing precise application of force and a small degree of automation. Pressure is maintained by the action of raw golems. Ooh. Chained and lashed to pumps distributed throughout the district to supply power. So pressure is maintained by the action of raw golems, chained and lashed to pumps distributed throughout the district to supply power. So I'm assuming that means like animated golems.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That is such a... So not only is that just such a cool lore concept, and I can see the visual of just like these animated things going, but you know what that also immediately stands out as? A weakness. If you're paying attention, if you're a good player, you immediately know if you could, like, if you had a spell that could deanimate them, instant cutting off to all their powers.
Or take over one of them.
Right.
Turn them. Shoot.
So the temples go into the Sharl district. Okay. So that'll be the government and the guild halls next.
Okay.
But yeah, I like that amount of detail because it's just enough to get players thinking like, hey, if we got to go in here and we got to disrupt some shit, those golems, man. You know what I mean? Like that just, or the other player, right? So that's one type of player. Here's the other type of player. So don't start shit near the pumps. Because
Yes.
those could also double as guards. Like because it does say that right here, pressure is maintained by the action of raw golems chained and lashed to pumps distributed throughout the district to supply power. So throughout the Gil district. What's interesting, chained and lashed to pumps. Raw golems come from the spirit of magic of this place. It has to do with the ley lines. Oh, so that's why they're lashed, is because these are actual natural creatures that don't want to be here. So again, letting them free could be really interesting.
That could be fun. I'm one of those kind of players. Let's see what happens. Well,
Right.
it depends on the character. Dobbs would never do that.
I really like this concept too. I really like that he went through the idea of working with the water and dealing with that to make basically like a hydraulic system for a lot of machinery. Like I like have the thought process for that. I've had similar ideas, but using like, air and stuff like that for just like little like, tricks and things.
Oh, right,
But
right.
I do like the idea of using like hydraulic presses and stuff. All right, Booth. Booth is home to two engines of dwarven industry: the forges and the arcanists. The steel that is the lifeblood of every dwarf is forged here by the continuous burning of coke. The arcanists also operate here, building the spirit mazes that are used to tame the primordial spirits that are attracted to the ley line. Potioners and chemists also operate here as an offshoot of the arcanic colleges, focusing their studies on the water ley line to produce new potions, vapors, and ices. I'm liking that all of this feels very together. This location, like it's the first time we're hearing about the ley lines, but it doesn't suddenly feel out of place. And again, immediately tying back into the water concept, that the water is here. You know what I mean? And because, being in this district is where they're kind of focused. So
Yeah.
I'm liking that this all feels comforting in the sense that I've been in like builds where it's like you start to walk through and you just realize how like hobbled together it is.
It feels like there's holes. It feels like there's patches. It feels...
Or just places don't mix. Like you go from, like some weird, like, like amazing stonery work, and then suddenly you're in a decrepit, like wooden, shackle building. And it's like, wait a minute, why would this be here in the middle of this like stone area? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of times where it's like the thought wasn't put into how these are going to work off of each other. And this does. This feels like all of this actually works. And again, not a lot of information, just enough to kind of get an idea of when I come here, where do I have to go?
Yeah.
Like, where would I want to go? And then once I'm there, I'll figure out what it looks like.
Yeah.
Let's see us. Chaos. 2 ley lines cross, Murgle, a ley line of spirit, and a ley line of water. Okay. Interesting. How many ley lines are in this setting? Like, total? Like, is there like a ley line for every element? And so that's the idea. Like, these ley lines are just like stronger for those elements. So would you expect to find like a ley line of fire, and a ley line of air, or is this just something more specific to like this mountain range? I'm really curious about that. Charl is home to the Dwarven government and guild halls, which is always great. I always like a town hall area or a space designated for rites and rituals and government. It also sets the tone for, hey, when you go in here, it's probably going to be less combat. It's probably going to be less action. It's probably going to be more diplomacy, dialogue, role play. So I like when towns are somewhat designed to kind of set up the expectation for the type of gameplay. So
okay.
That's what this feels like, right? Like, I feel like if I'm going to go to Charl, I'm not going to Charl and then like just, we're going to be like brawling every left and right.
Yeah.
Feels like we're going to be talking to people. Feels like I'm going to have
to be more like, RP heavy.
I'm going to have to, be rolling those charisma checks and persuasion checks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm going to go to Gil, where, there's the workshops, I'm going to be haggling. I'm going to be shopping. I'm going to be looking for stuff. I'm going to be, I'm going to be a little bit harsher about things, right? And I like that. I like that this kind of sets all of that up. Let's see. I don't know. Added ley lines to the world when you created the city. Okay, so the ley lines basically are kind of just a fresh thought. So we have a ley line of spirit and a ley line of water here, but we don't really have many others. But I love the idea of them, so I'm working on a grander theory of ley linism. If that is something that you want help on, I have plenty of ideas for similar things. I've played with the concept of ley lines, and between that as well as Dresden and the Apprentice Adept series, all of that has so many concepts. I would love to work on that with you. If you need any help or want just any interest in ideas, send us a topic idea in the Discord and we will do that. It's a good point. You can send us your own homebrew and topic ideas in the Discord, which is now in the chat. I'll also post, if you guys like what you guys are seeing and you want to see, if you missed anything, if you came in late, or if you want to see any of our other stuff, you can check out YouTube. I just posted the link in chat as well, where we have our VOD channel that has all of our live streams available to watch whenever you'd like.
Heck yeah.
All right. So, hola. Cranes and ropes litter this district, with water warehouses built directly over the canals themselves. Boats are unloaded as they travel through the warehouse, their loads distributed to the smaller canal boats known as Gesha. Boats do not stop as they are unloaded. Larger boats may need to take multiple trips through these warehouses in order to be unloaded, but stringent management ensures that the flow of traffic is rarely impeded. Lizard folk form a plurality of the non-dwarven residents here, and their balance on the high wires and ropes matches their grace in the water. So we talk about layers. This is just one of those tiny little layers that technically means nothing in the grander scheme of things. But to a creative and observant player, this is a very unique and interactable concept. This thing where boats are on the water, shipped in, and then they go into this giant ass warehouse. So they're indoors, but they never stop. You have a perfectly geared system where boats come in and people just get on it, strap things, remove it, get on smaller boats. They're sent out. And this boat, like a car wash, is just in and out, one motion.
Why does this lightweight remind me of those little things at sushi restaurants where the sushi's coming around and they're just constantly going and just stuff is always being happening. Somebody's going and grabbing a piece. Someone's putting something that's empty on it, like whatever the case may be.
And just like the little add-in of the lizard folk being, just as graceful in the wires. So you just imagine them just everywhere. Sushi conveyor. Yeah. And that's my thing, right? Like it's just enough to give me an idea of what this right here is what I'm talking about the illustrative. It was just illustrative enough. I can imagine a big ass warehouse, a ship going into it, and then going inside and imagining just seeing
100%.
You don't see lizard folk. You just see silhouettes and things just crawling and moving almost like bugs on the wall, because there has to be so many. And you imagine like it's not just them walking across the wires, but as soon as the ship comes in, I imagine like the moment the ship breaks the threshold, lizard folk are literally just almost like spiders, just crawling down from every wall and corner onto the ship, strapping up boxes, getting things on cranes, and then immediately, like as the ship goes, the cranes just lift up and move out of the way, and the ship keeps going, and it just does that in like this,
This gives me a completely different view of lizard folk than I've had before. Like this makes me feel like, because you have the Duergar are like Underdark dwarves, right?
Yeah.
And the Drow are Underdark elves. Like this makes me feel like they're these new type of lizard folk that just exist now. It's very cool. I like it a lot.
So again, those little tiny layers that make everything live, right? That make it feel slightly unique, slightly different, but that just adds so much more to what I'm seeing and what I'm visualizing. And then Takga. The limited number of non-dwarvens, I can say that, right? There we go. The limited number of non-dwarves in Murrugal tend to live in the sprawling Taga archipelagos that surround Murrugal proper. Floating platforms of wood and steel provide a basis for the forests of decomposition and vats of Murrugal rust that, along with the strange yet plentiful fish of the Gresh River, supply Murgal with its food. Organic garbage of every kind is imported into Murgal, especially wood chips. This lumber is layered into a kind of decomposition forest that generates a thick harvest of mushrooms. Corpses of those who die in Murgal are hung from posts and fumigated continuously to prevent infestation, allowing grave spore mushrooms to grow. Less suitable organic garbage, such as fish scraps, are composted and placed into lakes after being washed with various chemical baths. Murgal rust, a common foodstuff, grows as a skin on these lakes and is harvested daily. That, again, so much life gets brought. Like there's so much life here. There's just so much color, even just, color in terms of like just how creative and how alive this feels. I mean, this idea of, you had me with the rust. I was thinking that because of just all of like, the stuff that they build, and because they're underwater with all of this, water, and they're underground with all this water, I thought this was an actual rust that they were having to have a problem with. But it's like an algae. It's an algae that floats on these rivers that they just eat. Like that's so dope. And again, it's all of the layers of self-sustainability. Where it comes from, the origins of it, how they process it, and what the output is. All of it's there, and it's believable. It's not just they just do this. Like he went through all of the aspects of importing decomposition, having a decomposition forest, having lakes of chemicals, basically, again, how water treatment plants work, but having these different chemicals that are then create a pool suitable for this edible fungus algae to grow that you can just feed your whole people.
And it's so crazy how, like, we don't recognize how an entire ecosystem can occur by a small influence. Like, I worked construction for a short period of time, and there was a huge deal about how you have to, like, grade a hill when you're trying to do certain things, because if you don't, then water will find a path and it'll create a groove, and if it does that enough, then guess what? Stuff starts growing there, and life starts getting created there, and then boom, you got something you can't mess with. You got to leave it alone because you created a natural, and you can't. And so it's all this craziness, but like stuff like that can happen. You can create an entire ecosystem that could create something that never existed before.
No, that's such a cool concept.
So
like
cool.
Again, and it explains how, it explains a question that no one had is, how are they sustainable? Like that's a question no one asked, but it's there. We love that stuff.
Yes.
Y'all know we love answers to questions that don't exist, because again, that's just, how we make sense of things. But again, it's all there. It all makes sense. The disposal of corpses is a nice touch as well. Being able to get a specialty mushroom off of that is just, instead of just, they're thrown in there, he added that extra layer of, there's an extra component that we can get from that.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you, Bob, because lizard folk do seem to make an ideal Dark Canal City concept. I love that because there's water. They live there. For those that don't want to migrate, because again, you have the lizard folk on the surface. These ones don't want to migrate, so they come in here where the water's consistent.
I swear, I get these like vibes of these like lizard folk on these like gondola like boats, like running back and forth, and you're just using these giant like sticks to like push themselves
ironically,
back and
what
forth.
I'm imagining, for whatever reason, because they're here inside this, the Underdark area or this mountain, and things would be a little bit different. Instead of imagining the traditional like lizard folk or with like like obviously scales and everything, but instead of like a bunch of like the fins on the face and the spikiness and everything, for whatever reason, I'm thinking more like gecko type lizard.
I could see
more
that.
Smooth, like more like more smoother like features.
Interesting.
Again, just being able to just like do all the lizard folk things, but these are more like gecko-ish type lizards, where it's like the way they move, the way they it's not as humanoid. It's more of that like just fluid slithering motion.
Almost like a mix between like Yanti and lizard folk, maybe. Because they're kind of like snakes and like slithery and slidey and a lot more.
That's what I'm thinking of these. Is like because again, they do use the water, but they obviously use the cave system more. So you imagine that's why they're so good at climbing, right? Is like the gecko with like the feet, the ability to climb. So like imagine these things can literally just climb on walls. Unlike their outside counterparts who are amazing at swimming, maybe they can survive underwater, they can breathe and they can swim underwater, but their real specialty is literally being able to climb the walls. And again, why they're on the ropes, why they're so good, why they have all that good balance. They were literally made to survive here. I like, again, these are that this is good concept of lore, because this is actually meaning that this is actually more universal. Like, this could be usable by more than one person, because it doesn't give you everything that you need to use.
It feels like imagine like the same lore that everyone goes off of, that's given to you by like the D&D original books, like the source lore. Like, it almost feels like you could take that.
It's a foundation.
Again, yes,
it's absolutely a good foundation. All right, let's keep on going. Okay, so Margallan mining. All right, number 1, scouting, securing, and surveying. Dwarven or Jack scouts and fighters clear out sections of cavern of monsters and enemy factions before laying down a perimeter, which can range from temporary fortifications for quick extraction or more permanent, well-engineered structures for more extensive stays. Dwarven rock seers come with apprentice wizards, washing fissures with acid, cracking rock with ice formations, carefully carving ore out of the rock. With ice formations, carefully carving the ore out with the rock. It is an invisible process hidden underneath the rock, separating the vein of the ore and the gemstone under a bed of stone. That is so brilliant. Adding that detail of, because I've thought about this before, of utilizing physics differently. That's why I like having physics in D&D.
Oh yeah.
And I love that he added that in there of, literally you have this cavern in this rock, and you have water everywhere, right? Constantly ebbing and flowing through the mountain. So imagine being able to know, hey, here's a drip here. That means that there's a vein of water. If I freeze it, it will expand and break off this whole section of rock and open it up for us. Like, I've thought about that myself. I have things like that developed in High Point.
I love
that.
But
just the way that it's presented here is just so beautiful. Like, it's such a great way. Like, again, washing fissures with acid, cracking rock with the ice to carefully carve them out of the rock. Oh, it's just it's such a great detail to add in there. I love to see it. So that says number 3, Dwarven golem casters come with a small army of worker golems, beast golems, homunculi, and constructs. They summon forth spirits or call them from their surroundings, binding them and trapping them in the rock. These bestial raw golems are tamed on sight, either by whip and chain or by enchantment and subtlety. This befits the golem caster. This as befits the golem caster's style and the raw golem being tamed. The raw golems carry away the ore and waste rock. So basically, there's an essence of spirit in here. They can trap it in rock and then animate it and then bend it to its will.
Interesting. Now, I mean, see, I'm always getting technical like the second, because I'm like, all right, is there like a size limit? Like is there like different like types of spirits? But again, like you say, they give you just enough to,
I think from what I read, it's more of a, like, cause there's like the spirit ley line. It's not so much spirits as in like an essence of spirit, and enough of it can animate and become like kind of like almost like a hive mind, like a swarm, to where it's like the energy can be siphoned and enough of it can be isolated, but its whole purpose, it understands itself, but it wants to be part of the collective again, right? It wants to be free because it was a free spirit. So that's how I'm imagining it. But I don't know if that's what he intended, as these are individual spirits and this is just where they hang out because the ley line's here, because that could be it.
Oh, okay.
Or it's just because, there are just individual spirits that come forth from the ley line. But I just almost imagine it more like a constant flow. He says that's a pretty good way of imagining it, but I'm assuming that he means it's an essence, and then as you siphon off, it wants to go back to the hive mind, right? So it's like a swarm, it's a hive mind.
Right.
You could take a lot out if you want to make a big golem, take a little out to make a little golem, but it doesn't want to do that. It wants to be free, it doesn't want to be under your command. And some are more willing. It does seem like some are more easy to coax into doing it, and others, again, seem to be, for whatever reason, unknown to them. They can be more violent and more aggressive to breaking free.
So, an interesting story that I was told when I went to go visit a Zen garden when I was out visiting one of my friends we were in there and we were looking at all the bonsai trees, right? And we were just talking to this lady who's like just like the information person. Like you can ask her questions, and she seemed very spiritual. Anyways, and so we were talking to her, and we were asking, because a lot of what bonsai tree is you bend these trees into different like shapes and forms that are unnatural to them, right? And sometimes you're clipping and breaking off certain aspects of them, and she said that when she was first there, she had a really hard time like accepting what was happening to these trees, because it was like you're not allowing them to be free. You're not allowing them to just like express them and do whatever they want. And she said that she went and she asked the trees, like she was having a really hard time with it. She legit went up and she asked the trees, like, how do you feel about this stuff being done to you? And they were like, we love it. We love what happens here, because what she didn't see is the effect that it has, because these trees not only feed off of, like sunlight, but they feed off of like the energy. And so the fact that they now, because they are created this way, they have such a huge influx of people coming in to see them, and just the energy that those people, like when they're in there, when they're in that moment, if you've ever been to like a Zen garden, it's just this like,
this is not where I thought this conversation was
going.
I
know. But it's this zenful, like peaceful, like energy. And like sometimes I feel like some of these golems might feel like, hey, maybe I can just go with the flow. Maybe I can just let this happen. But others, they have a different, for whatever reason, like their energy is much more resistant to what's happening as a result.
Cosmic does give us a little bit of an insight. So we said that when he first conceived them, they were supposed to be individual spirits, some good, some bad, and it would be distinguished from each other through like an arcane ritual involving spirit mazes. So yeah, that's a cool concept. I do like, again, thinking through how you're getting these golems and this whole process, assigning different people.
Very much so.
Let's see here. So number 4, steps 2 and 3, which are the seers and the golem casters, are repeated until mining sites become indefensible, cave-in prone, depleted, or otherwise unworkable. When possible, a former mining site will be made unstable and prone to cave-in to deter enemies from mining too close to dwarven territory. So basically, they just go in, they mine it out, and once it either becomes unsafe or useless to them, they move on. And sometimes they'll even make areas that are no longer useful to them, they'll intentionally sabotage them. So if anyone comes nearby, it will fall out and basically not allow anyone to come near their area.
Interesting.
So they're strategic in their mining, but they're also ruthless in the fact that you're not going to get anywhere.
That's crazy.
You're not going to get anywhere near them.
You're not going to. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like really. That's really creative. An additional like element of like situational defense. It's like, hey, anybody wants to like come after us or come after what we were working on, like you guys are going to be met with like a significant obstacle. That's pretty cool.
I like that. Okay. So that's just how the mining works. And then Murgal's magics are dominated by 2 ley lines, one of water and one of spirit. Murgalan arcanists have studied both extensively, referring to their combination as Lao, although in their telling, Lao is a foundational component of both water and spirit. Laoian water magic allows the manipulation of liquids' pH, temperature, freezing point, boiling point, viscosity, density, adhesion, and cohesion, among other things. Laoian spirit magic is responsible for the raw golems, spirit mazes, and beneficial guardians. Laoian magic is also responsible for spirit water, a key component of spells and artifacts, which anchor a spirit to the material plane. Oh, that's interesting. So, of course, my player mind of how do I tinker with this?
How do
kind of like you were saying earlier, like, let's play with this. I see locked up golems, let's unlock them. So my first thing that I see here, the water magic, I love this. The water magic allows the manipulation of pH, temperature, freezing, boiling, viscosity, density. Like that's their the magic they can do with this special water, which is really cool. The mixture of all of this stuff. So what I look at is whether or not from a player point of view or from a BBEG point of view. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Baba Kiss, did you say we were gone? I thought you said, oh no, you were good. You said we were gone for a second? Is that what happened? Because I just realized Stream Elements just said that we're live again. I wonder, did we have... so from a player point of view, in my estimate, ley lines are not player accessible. Okay. So that makes total sense. I wonder, were we... Yeah, you dropped for a bit. That's weird. I'm not showing any drops... That's weird. It doesn't show that I dropped at all.
Yeah, I've been watching the stream the whole time. I don't know. That's super weird.
20 seconds. I wonder if it was like an attempt at an ad, since I'm not affiliate. There's no ads, but maybe it was like a failed ad or something.
Interesting.
That sounds like an ad time frame, but we don't have ads yet. That's weird. 20 seconds.
Huh.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't miss much. But yeah, so my initial thought too is like, if you have a BBEG, right, or some kind of like fail-safe, if you whatever you want to call it, like it could be the BBEG situation, it could be a fail-safe, could be something that players could mess with, but you have this idea of this specific type of water that also has a specific type of magic to it. Can you imagine if it were like found out, again, BBEG or otherwise, or just kind of like a fail-safe to where it's kind of like a, we won't be taken alive situation.
So I got you.
Can you imagine if the powers that be didn't tell anybody, but were always and constantly leaching the Leyline water into like the food supply? Or what if they never told anybody, but that's really what makes like the rest grow, the stuff that they eat? Like, so the idea though is they consume a lot of this. So the fail-safe or the BBEG's, grand plan is if enough people have this stuff, if he has this Leylinian magic, right? And he can do all of those things. He could literally look at someone, and I mean, like imagine like a religious point of view of you could literally like the BBEG is like the priest or like, the archduke or whatever of a theological thing. So he calls someone a heretic and go heretic, and their blood boils because he changed the pH. Their eyes, literally boil. Or he says, how dare you speak ill? And then their tongue like freezes, and then their mouth freezes, and then their whole, like they just start to freeze. Like, can you imagine having the control of these people? Because what they don't understand is that
they've been eating
the water,
and they've been That's so
and
crazy.
what you do is you let them know the water is real. The water is always used in healing potions and magic, so they know it's a different thing. But you also make it to where it's like it's dangerous to drink, so don't drink it. It's not. It's only in medicine. Only when the church gives it to you can you drink it. But little do you know, it's literally in your system all the time. So it's like, whether it's a fail-safe, a BBEG, but that concept that I read this and I go, you have this magic with this water,
crazy.
And this water is in a certain place. My immediate thing is that is so dangerous, because imagine this for a point of view of, what if it's defensive? What if part of the ritual to get in here is like, you have to take a shower, or you have to, or they give you water, like, hey, welcome, it's going to be a minute, here's some water, everyone drinks, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out if you mess up, they can make you stop moving because you drank that water, but only guests. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like it's like, we don't, like, what if you came into the town, they're giving you the water and everything, you maybe have to wash your hands or whatever, but they get water on you, in you somehow. And then you're like, hey, do you need our weapons or everything? Oh no, we don't need to collect weapons here. And that's all they ever say. We don't need to collect weapons here. Oh, we don't need a town guard. That's all you ever say, is we don't need to be worried. Like, you just say we don't need it. And then, because when something happens, you basically just have these clerics, right? Just come out, or these wizards come out and just work your, just do this, what he said, that you could manipulate the liquid, and you could just be like, stop. This is why we don't need to worry about your weapons. I control you. Yeah. It's just that whole concept of that could be an entire plot point. Like, again, you do all of this other stuff, and then at the very end, you think you defeated the BBEG, and then, like, as you're leaving, you get that note of, like, it's in the water. Like, and then the BBEG wasn't the BBEG all along. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was just being manipulated by the church. It's just such a cool idea. I love details like that, because it's details like that aren't inundative. They don't feel like I have to remember all of that. It literally, it feels like you would just be like, oh yeah, and they have this magic and they have this water. And that's where I, as a player, go, whoa, like, back up. They have what now?
You said what?
They can do what now?
Wait, one more time?
Like, but that's the thing, right? It's not one of those things where you're like, man, how am I supposed to remember Leilanian water and what it can do in these rock golems? Why do I, like, it doesn't feel like when I'm reading this, none of this feels like necessary information. You know what I mean? Like, you've been in those gaming sessions where you're being given stuff and you're like, well, you know, the Trilerian people of the Tresic kingdom of, you know, the 18th era. And it's like, I'm never going to remember a single syllable you just said.
Yeah, my brain's hurting already.
But with this, it's like, hey, we got these magic. We have this magic water. By the way, if you know the magic, this water can do these random things. And then over here, and you're like, whoa, wait a second. It could do what now? pH balance? You could literally just make someone acidic from the inside. What? That immediately sparks interest with, again, not telling me anything. How it's done, who can do it, what are the limits, but I want to know now. Like, and it's there, and it fits. I still believe it. Nothing, and this is the great thing too. None of these have made something stand out as, well, this doesn't work, right? Like, none of this is so OP that it doesn't work. None of this is so underwhelming that it's like, I would never want to visit here. It has all of those things. It's like if you were to describe Disney World to somebody, right? Like, okay, for any of you out there who understand the difference between Disneyland and Disney World,
right?
This is what I'm going to talk about, right? This is how I'm going to make this analogy, is how you describe Disneyland to somebody is a lot different than how you would describe Disney World. Disneyland is a single place. I mean, it has like, you know, one or two of the parks outside, but like Disneyland is a lot smaller, has a lot less to do. So therefore, when you say I went to Disneyland, you're going to talk about the highlights. You're going to tell them what rides to go to. You're going to tell them the best route to make. You're going to tell them where to spend their money. Like, there's a lot more about being there in the specifics, because that's really all there is to talk about. You don't just say you went there, right? But Disney World, there's like, 13 different parks on the same property, right? Or maybe that's an exaggeration, but there's at least like 8 or 9 different parks.
Right.
And each of them,
I mean, it's
their
Disneyland.
own theme.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was 13.
Exactly. Like, there's their own theme, there's their own rides, there's everything about them are wholly isolated to them, each other. And you can go to all of these, right? Talking about that, you're not going to be like, you're not going to get into all, you're not going to tell someone, okay, so when you go to the Magic Kingdom, here are the 19 things you need to do. And then when you go over to, you know, the Star Wars one, here are 5 things you have to do. And then when you go over to the Avatar one, here are 7 things you have to do. That no one's going to, like, that's going to be inundative, right? You're going to be like, whoa, that's crap. That, like, what are you talking about? Like, there's different locations. You're going to be like, I'm not going to remember all that. But if someone's like, okay, you need to go to Avatar and you need to go to Tron. You know, those 2, guaranteed put those at the top of your list. Get those rides out of the way, and then go to Epcot for food and drink. You know what I mean? The highlights.
Right.
The overview. It's like, this is a big place. I can't tell you everything. Here are the things you need to know. Go to these 2 top rides, these 3, 4 top rides. Go to this place for food and drink. Whereas Disneyland, you're going to be like, okay, forget this ride, forget that ride. Here are the rides you care about, and here's how you need to walk around the, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm only going to the one place. So all of that detail makes sense to go to that one place. You know, but if you're going to tell me everything I can possibly do at 9 different locations that I don't even know I'm going to yet, I'm not going to listen.
Yeah, I totally get you.
And to me, that's what this is. I read this, and it's like you gave me a description of Disney World. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got a description of, hey, it's the Doluk Dwarves are basically, you know, the characters. It's based off the Disney characters. Okay, I got a quick recap of what the Disney history is. Yep. And then I have these different locations that are the different parks. And then it gave me just a little bit of snippet of why the park is relevant to the big picture and what you can expect to find there. Just enough to be like, well, what park do I want to go to? Where am I going to go to in this city? And then once I get there, then I get all the juiciness, right? You're not telling me every detail about the castle. You're not telling me every little person I have to talk to. You're waiting for me to get there to experience it, but you're giving me enough to want to go.
I feel like it's just enough to, like, make everywhere there feel valuable. And, like, especially if you're in a party of, like, adventurers, like, everyone's going to be able to find something that they can be looking forward to. Even if like 3 people are looking forward to the same thing, it's not like anybody's gonna be like, nah, I'm just gonna sit in the corner and I'm not really gonna care about what we do. Like you can find something cool here, from these golems to the mining, to the river, to the lizard folk.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
None of it feels required. None of this feels like I need to memorize this. So if I forget that there's a bunch of lizard folk here because it wasn't my intention, it's not like it's going to cause distraction, that I don't know that, right?
Right.
Again, it's like not knowing that the things come through a giant warehouse. Like, it's not necessary to know that. I don't really need to remember what area that was in, but if I want to,
yes,
I can go look for it.
And it'll be
fun for the whole adventuring party.
It's simple enough. It's simple enough that like when those things do happen and they come up and like it's being described to you, you'll be like, oh, that's right, I do remember that. Or it'll be something that's easy enough to basically bring back to the forefront of your mind.
And then Bubacus says, let's say we went back a little bit here. So he does say that from a player point of view, the ley lines aren't actually accessible, right? So it's not like something that you interact with, but he does say from a BBGG or an NPC perspective, that's what the ley lines are for. It's magic that is essential to the world that players haven't studied. So the players just don't understand it is there to just be usable by the world, and the players are kind of just there next to it, experiencing it.
Right.
Because they haven't done any of that. In Venturology, the Pool of Radiance is just about that. Blessed pools are being used by evil forces. It's the Faerun audiobook. That's cool. Yeah, and again, I love those kind of concepts of things that seem benign can just easily turn out to be not that way.
I love that shit.
I'm not really sure what you meant by neat, and I really like that because we've mentioned it quite a bit. So I wasn't really sure what exactly you were talking about there.
I was paying attention when that popped up in there, and it was something we were talking about that was actually very cool.
So many ideas. I didn't see it pop up, so I didn't make the mental note of what we were talking about. He does say that the ley lines, it's ley lines, so extends across large swaths of the land. What makes Murgle slightly special is that it was founded on the crossing of 2. Okay, so this place is the intersection of 2 specific ley lines. That's right. It was from when you were going over. Was the possible with the water magic?
Yeah, which you like putting in the food and stuff like that. That's what you're
just
talking
being
about.
able to, and again, because that could be anything from it has negative connotations because it's in everybody, or again, you could have it to where it's only in people you need to control, the guards. Maybe it's only in guests to the town because you need to be able to control them. There's so many different levels of this idea of you built in the aspect that you can control the water. What happens when that water is inside somebody?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it does become part of
that's
them.
What I love is like when something begs questions to be asked, like investigation to occur about a thing. It's like, hey, there is something of substance here that you can get something out of. Like other times where you get information and there's just like, there's really nowhere to go for it. There's nothing to investigate. It's just there. I don't really know much or anything about it. There's not much I can do with it. Like, okay, you're a king and you rule over a lot of people and so what? But like all of this gives you somewhere to go, and that's what I really, really like, and what I feel like we can really, really run with.
This water concept reminds me of something that I built a long time ago. It was akin to this, but it was inspired off of psionics instead. It was inspired off of meta psionics, because in meta psionics there are abilities to be able to like control your blood flow, stop bleeding and things like that. Like you could literally just stop, like if you just have a giant gash, you could just be like, stop, because you can just control everything in your body with meta magic or with meta psionics. So you could just cut off blood flow but not lose circulation. Like you could just redirect your blood. So it was a cool concept. So I love psionics, dude. Psionics in 2nd edition are one of my favorite fucking things ever. But I was playing around with that idea of what can you do with meta magic, like with meta psionics. I didn't quite flesh out the idea of like bottling it or being able to create a potion, although I kind of wanted to do kind of like the Batman Bane thing where you could create a meta magic potion, like psionic potion, where you could drink it and have like temporary things. Never got into fleshing that out, but what I did come up with was a false berserker or a false barbarian.
Interesting.
And basically what it was is whether it be by, amulet, or whether it be by like having someone around, like a psionicist around you that could do it. But it was essentially going to be like a plot point to where you thought that these things were like barbarians, right? Raging, like, resistant to all of this damage and whatnot. But in reality, it was just meta psionics. So like you'd slash them across the thing, do 20 damage, and then they'd immediately stop bleeding and then just berserk at you.
Yeah.
Because it was controlling the blood flow and then adrenaline. So they're not actual barbarians, they're not actual berserkers. But it's kind of like the Bane thing, where it was like they were influenced to do this, and they're literally being held back from dying every last inch. So up until 1 hit point, they are giving it all their all.
It's almost like how most people use, their HP. Hey, if I'm at 1 HP, I'm fighting just like I was at 100
even though you
HP.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly.
But this was part of that design, right? When I was trying to think of like how do you represent like fatigue in combat, and this was one of those concepts, and it just reminds me of like that idea of controlling people with the water, but that idea of being able to look like you're able to do something when it's something else that's causing it. But again, being able to stop blood, being able to stop pain could make you look like a barbarian. It looks like you just don't care about that damage. But in reality, it's just not available to you. But then once it is, you just hit the ground in just agony and pain and suffering.
It's just like, oh, this is terrible.
So this was a fantastic read. Babakis, thank you so much. This was not only well written, but this was so well layered. I don't want to say I'm duly surprised. It's not like I didn't expect you to give us something that we would like or that wasn't going to be good. I'm really blown away with how well all of this layered together. I wasn't expecting to get I was expecting to get a complete picture of something. I was not expecting to get such a large picture with so little detail.
It is really, really hard in situations like this to be descriptive and concise.
You know what it is? It's like a Glenn. Is it Glenn Close? Who was the person that did the giant mural paintings with like little paintings at a time? So yeah, it was a person who like he would do like the little one by one tiles, but then when you stepped back, it was like a giant portrait.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine this is. It's like you gave me so much to see with so little detail, meaning like each piece was so little, but step back and look at this and I'm just like, I get this. Like I understand what this is. I get like going into this with this detail. What I mean by that is it's not like I can picture the town and how I'm walking around it, but as a player, you give me this as a precursor, right? Of a game, right? You just say, hey, this is just a little bit of a precursor. This would be ingestible. This is if you guys are DMs that like to give any kind of like written material, this is a fantastic example of what you want to accomplish with that written material. You don't want to make a novel. You don't want to make a short story. You want to make it enticing, enriching, and again, your characters know more information than the players. Don't expect the players to be caught up with the characters, right? They don't need to know the entire history like everybody else would. This is the kind of stuff that it hits all of the things that you want them to be aware of without making them feel like they have to know every last one of these. Each player, kind of like what Babakis said, fun for the whole adventuring party. Each player is going to grab something, and in total, the whole picture is going to be there. But yeah, it's well written. It gives me a really good picture in the sense that if I'm a player and I'm setting up a character build and this was what I was given, this is the prompt, and say, hey, this is the setting that we're playing in, I have a very good expectation. Again, I don't know what we're going to combat with. I don't know all the specifics, but I have a very good idea of the types of people we're going to run into, the types of attitudes, the things we're going to be able to get away with. We're going to, like it tells me the type of details that the DM is working with. So I understand the details that I can manipulate. Again, golems being chained in order to be slaves. These are very specific details you don't just put in the background for nothing, right? And on top of that, it's also putting me in that mindset of I know what kind of what campaign I'm walking into. From start to finish, however many gaming sessions this is going to be, I understand, like, this isn't just one of those adventuring to get gold.
Yeah.
Like, it's putting me in a mindset of like, okay, there is going to be a lot of
there's so much to when you're creating the actual character, when you're building it, there's so much that you can play with this type of information here. Like, say I want to be somebody who works with raw golems. I know how and where to create my character to be one of the peoples that messes with the spirits, that knows how to play with this that I know where to put some of my backstory, where to put some of the pieces if I want to.
And if the campaign is that we're all outsiders, I know it. I have a very high expectation and pretty good idea of exactly how this campaign is going to feel. Like, that's what I mean. I don't know how I'm going to be walking around. I don't know what people are going to look like. I don't know how they're going to really treat us, but I do. Like,
yes.
I have a very, if we were told, hey, you're coming here as an outsider. Oh, I'm like, okay, so the Jakkat, we're going to have to go through it or find a way around. Like, there's things about, like, if we go through the Jakkat, we'll have some respect. If we don't refuse, can we still get in with a temporary pass? Like, will they look at us? Like, there's a lot of different things. I'll bet, like, how we react to the Jakkat. Like, little things just make me understand, like, and then again, like, just how you weave that story because of, like, the different factions. They're all here under one mindset, but they're all going to have their own, you know, like, allegiances. So yeah, I already have a very good idea of what this setting would be. And that helps. Wow. Okay. So this is going to be a struggle. It's a new type of ruling, because again, I can't use it in general because it's not my setting, it's not my lore, so that just automatic 1 point. It's very detailed, it's very balanced, so no negative points there. It was very inspirational. Had a lot of good conversations. It might lose a point for the inspiration though, because I'm not going to walk away with anything. I gotta be honest, like in terms of, like, none of these are so new to me that I'm like, man, I need to.
You need to start. I need to put something like that in my.
For them, again, I don't have these exact things, but I have adjacent that I feel comfortable. So yeah. So other than that, but I mean, it's perfectly balanced. It's perfectly detailed. It's got. I mean, as a player, I'm all in. Like, I want to go here as a player. I want
very much. I
don't even, and in fact, I don't want to be of this place. I want to go there as a player, as in be an outsider. I want to experience that process of getting in, getting accepted, and what even that looks like from people who. It's like, because you think about how many different layers. It's like, you are an outsider who goes to the Jakkat to get into the city. So you are probably the lowest of the low. Well, you're just above the lowest of the low because you went through the Jakkat.
Right.
Everybody who doesn't is below you. But then you're at the lowest of the low within the Jakkat. But then there's the people there that have taken the Jakkat like you were, who were outsiders, took it, but they've been there longer. So they're above you on the totem. But above that are people who are of here, but weren't officially accepted, so they took the Jakkat. Right? And then above that are the people who were here and were accepted, but also had to do the Jakkat because everyone had to. And then slightly above that were the people who were within the influence of the Doluk and had to take the Jakkat. And then the people above that are the people who had lineages. I'm related to somebody who is a Doluk, not by blood, but of marriage, and I took the Jakkat. And then above that is, well, my great-great-grandfather or cousin is a Doluk, so I have, like, a little bit of blood. And then above that is I'm like, you know, a cousin, and then a brother, you know, then it's a direct lineage, and then it's the half-blood, then it's the direct lineage, right? So imagine the fact that even in there, when it's like, when you announce yourself, like, I took the Jakkat, and be like, yeah, like, you look new. Like, well, I just took it. Be like, oh. I mean, like, there's so many layers to the effect that you were accepted here, but are you accepted? You know, like, there's still so many layers to unpack. And that's what I mean by when I read this and I go, I can envision this. I know what kind of gameplay this is. Like, this is what I'm talking about. I can already see what feel this gameplay would have. Like, what, you know, it's well thought out, but it's not, it's not chaotic. I don't think everyone's going to be rude. I think it's going to be very efficient. I think it's going to be very, if you are good for us, we're good for you. But if you waste our time, get out of our way kind of thing, right?
Right.
Like, I don't feel like people are going to be rude in the sense of, barbarians and people who are unintelligent. It's going to be rude in the sense of time is money. We have a place to take care of. What is your purpose here, right? And I kind of just like, I dig all of that. What days would you work on? What days would you work on ley lines on stream? That is interesting to me. Well, so in the Discord, if you want to submit that as a topic idea, that would probably be something that would happen on a Friday. That would probably be a deep dive topic. We still need I don't like deep dive is just like so generic. I need you guys' help. I need new episode titles. We got homebrew review for Monday, even though that's not that amazing, but at least it's something. But at least it's better than deep dive. I need something better for Fridays. But if it's a topic and you just want us to just openly experiment with it, talk about things that we have similar, that would be a Friday topic. If you want to fully flesh out what you already have and do it more like this, where we read what you have and then just talk about it openly, then you could submit it as another type of homebrew. Kind of similar to this, just with a direct write-up. It would just depend on what format you want. If you want it more as here's my idea, flesh it out and then rate it, that's the homebrew review. If you just want us to talk about the concept of ley lines as a topic and just see where we rabbit hole with that would be a Friday topic, and that would just go in the topics channel. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, so going back, I don't want to keep forgetting this. Doluk, Dwarves, and Jakkat, as well as the Dalgurum. Wow, fantastic. I have to say again, I can really only take away the fact that I'm not really going to walk away with like anything groundbreaking, any groundbreaking changes for High Point, and I can't really use it because it's not, my lore. But that's the only 2 points I can take away. So, 8 out of 10.
That's beautiful,
8 out of 10.
Man.
I want to be there. I want to create a character. I want to go there. I want to experience this. I think it's beautifully written. I think it's balanced. I think it's well layered. I think everything connects. And I think it's believable. Again, the number one thing is it's believable. There's nothing about this that doesn't fit with everything else that was said. There's nothing that stands out as, wait a second, if that's true, then that couldn't be true. And it just, again, as you walked me through this, the outside, getting into the mountain, how it's developed, why all of these sections exist, I'm just like, yeah, no. Even walking through how, like in Venturology, saying like, the idea of the algae being food is just the way you even walked through. Not just saying that, oh, and we have a pool where we grow algae. You know what I mean? No. You went with the aspect of, no, we import waste. We have a decomposition garden. We use the dead specifically for a different purpose, right? And he didn't just say we hang them to let them grow. They actually spray it down and make sure that it stays properly decomposing and not get infested, and
so that they can still like make sure it's edible for themselves.
Exactly.
Otherwise it'll get nasty, people get sick.
It's absolutely amazing, man.
Crazy.
And again, remember, these high points are not meant to be a rating of how good we think it is. It's just a rating of how likely we would be to use it. And the only 2 points I could take away are I can't use it because it's not my lore. So that just is just the general 1 point. And then the second point is just that it is really great, but I have enough adjacent things that it doesn't immediately give me like hey, I got to go create something similar in order to make High Point more fulfilled. That's pretty much it. It was fantastic, though. I loved the read. If you have anything else like this, that would be fantastic. I feel bad for whoever the DM was that didn't get to use this, but at the same time, I feel so happy for you that you got to use this.
Heck yeah, man.
And that we got to read it. Please work on more ley lines and then submit another Monday after a Friday stream. Okay, cool. So just decide if you want it to be a homebrew review where we read up what you specifically have written, or do it in the topics channel if you just want us to kind of have an open stream where we just chat openly about everything to do with ley lines, and how we would think they can be used. That would be fantastic. Yeah, no, that was excellent. Thank you guys so much for that. Let me just go there. Yeah, thank you guys so much. That was a lot of fun today. Everybody, thank you guys for being there. Cosmic, Bobakiss, Adventurology, thank you for keeping us company and keeping the chat going. That was excellent. Bobakiss, thank you for answering our questions. You want to do both a Friday and then a Monday? Oh, I like that. Submit the topic. Let us flesh out a bunch of random ideas. Let him do a write up and then submit it. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm okay with. I again, like I said, if you guys have a new item, if you guys have an item that you've already submitted, as long as there's significant changes, that's fantastic too. Or that if you want to submit a topic to get an idea to generate a homebrew to then have reviewed, 100%, because that would be also cool, because then we get to see how we influenced it, right? Again, I'm not here to see you guys take my my ideas, but to talk about how we think about ley lines, and then to see what that inspired, that, and then again see what we said, then to see what inspired in you, to then see when we read that, hopefully that inspires someone else, right?
Yes.
It's all of those layers of, we say something
Dominoes,
that
man.
gives you an idea, you say something that gives someone else an idea, and then, maybe a year from now, someone will be like, hey, remember that Bobakiss guy? He did this. Well, I created this because of that. Like, how cool would that be, right? Like,
yes.
Months from now, someone submits an item because of something that we did like this. Like, that's the goal. That's what we want to do.
That's why I really got to work on getting it set up so people can check out past home brews and look at stuff.
We do need to get that process.
Yeah.
And I did mention this yesterday on my game stream, but we are working. It's going to be a slower process, but we are in the background working on a fun little for the Discord, where you will be able to type the command and it will let you know what the last and next homebrew item is. And hopefully, if we can get it working properly, it'll even have a link so you could open it up, read up on them, see what the leaderboard says, what the score was, and all of that. But then that way, it'll keep you guys up to date a little bit more on what's happening with homebrew review. Just because Kage is pretty much taking control of that right now, so all of your submissions are going through him, through the Discord. He's taking care of all of that. He's doing the write-ups for me and everything, so that way I can look at it fresh, not know anything about it.
If you guys got any questions about how to submit stuff, or where you guys want to get it to, or what kind of information we need, please feel free to ping me, let me know in the Discord. But yeah, absolutely. I freaking love it, dude.
But it's really fun. I'm enjoying, not knowing what's coming. So really, I just know the title. Right before stream, he tells me what item it is and he tells me what type it is. That's all I know. So when we read it here, it is fresh to me, and he's only read it as much as he needed to in order to format it. So he tries to stay eyes
I'm
off.
not gonna lie. I talked to Bobakiss about this a little bit beforehand, but I had absolutely no idea what was in here, and so when we went through all of this, I was just as blown. It was fire. It was a good experience.
And so as of right now, that's what we're going to try to keep going. So all of that stuff, any kind of submissions for homebrew review, we're going to go through Kage. The other channels right now, I'm still monitoring. So if you have topics for us to discuss or things like that, I'm still trying to manage that in terms of the schedule for the stream. But just trying to separate everything else. So feel free to ping either of us in the Discord if you have any questions about stream or the Discord or anything else like that. But if it is specific to if an item is on the docket to be read, or if you have any questions on when your item might be in the queue or anything, go ahead and direct those to Kage in Discord, and then he'll be able to let you know where we're at. I will preface it with this real quick. We are trying not to have more than 2 weeks planned out. And primarily it's just a hierarchy issue, right? We'll always have, today we'll always have an item, and then we'll always, try to know what we're doing next week. It's going to be Cosmic Scythe finally. So we're going to finally be able to do that next week. But beyond that, we're going to try to leave them as tentative. They're going to just be tentatively assigned. So you might be told, hey, yours is in 2 weeks, yours is in 3 weeks. But keep in mind, if it's not literally next week, if we don't tell you, hey, yours is next, we are going to have a kind of tentative aspect, and that's primarily just to allow for fluctuations in priority. So, just to be, transparent, priority basically means if you've had 3 in a row and somebody else submits one, we might bump you because you've had 3 in a row already, and we want to, have as many people come through as possible. So kind of the unfortunate thing of what's happening with Cosmic recently is he submitted an item, but because we've, not had something submitted by Bobakiss before, and Adventurology had a few things, and Drabs had something, we were trying to get it to where we weren't doubling up. So we don't, if we can avoid it, we don't want to have, someone get 2 weeks in a row if we have other options. So that's kind of a deprioritization. And then if someone's brand new, right? So, you guys are, submitting us stuff now, which is great. But let's say, if we have a cosmic, an adventurology, and a Bobicus, and then another cosmic, and then another adventurology, if that's what's on the plan, but we get 2 new followers and they both submit something, we might bump those last 2 adventurology and cosmics items another 2 weeks, because not only are they already getting stuff, but they have a history, and then we want to get those new people in. So there's not a strict rule. It's basically just going to be a combination of trying to let everybody in. I don't want new people to have to wait months to see their item, especially if people who have been around are getting items reviewed all the time. So yeah, really the hierarchy is just the newer people are, the less that they've, either the new people, new submissions, or just trying to break it up so it's not the same person back to back to back, and let everyone have some fair game.
And to be honest, we're totally willing to work with you guys. If there's like an issue with like scheduling or something like that, you can definitely give me a shout. Yeah. Let me know. And
whether or not, I mean, if you absolutely need something to be pushed, like if you're like, hey, I know I'm in 4 weeks, but I can't make it,
something like that,
we can try to push it a week
here
earlier or a week later. We can absolutely make sure you guys get to do with it. But yeah, that's just the plan. We just want to be transparent with you guys. We don't want anyone to feel left out. We don't want anyone to feel like we're, making decisions based off of, choice. Like, we're just not like, oh, Inventurology writes them better, so let's always prioritize his. Like, no, it's not about that. It is primarily, the goal was always chronological. And then once there was several of you doing that, it just became, I just realized that what's to stop somebody from posting 10? And then just taking the next 2 months, right? We just couldn't allow that, which is why you can only post 1 per message. That allows us to prioritize them as you send them in. So we could say, hey, I just got 3 from Bobicus. Let's get his next, because, he hasn't had one in a while, but then let's spread his out for the next couple months, the next couple weeks, because we have a brand new person and we have 2 from, Inventurology who we haven't heard from in a while, right? That's all we're going to do, is we're just trying to cycle through, make sure no one has too much spotlight, but also make sure everyone gets fair representation, because the biggest goal and also fear is that we literally can't get to everybody. And then that would just mean expanding the stream to another day and having more homebrew review. But that is a bridge we will cross when we get to it. But those are some of our plans.
Good problems to have.
Yeah, so good problems. But yeah, so those are our plans. So you guys, if you have any questions, please post them in the Discord. We're still working on the FAQs. We're still working on ways for you guys to navigate the Discord better. I did add a new channel because I am really enjoying my game streams on the weekends. So I did add a new game chat channel for anybody who does want to just check me out on the weekends playing games. Just various video games. It's basically just a non-D&D chat channel. If you want to suggest games for me to play on stream, or if you just want to chat with me about the games I am playing, give me strategies, let me know what you guys play, anything like that. Basically, it's we didn't really have a non-D&D chat channel. I mean, the main channel was that, but I also recognize that because it's primarily a D&D Discord and a
most
D&D
people
stream
talking about.
Yeah, the main chat, I didn't want to get too convoluted with people trying to have 2 different drastic conversations. So I'm just trying to separate the non-D&D chat to that channel. And I got rid of the forums. I tested it out. It was crap. Forums suck. So we're not doing forums anymore.
Rip.
There is still a gaming sessions channel now where you can just talk about just the campaigns channel where you can talk about your own campaigns, things that you've gone through, things that you're planning for next gaming sessions, things like that. Just again, just more community chat, things like that. And yeah, I think that's all the updates so far. It's a slow process, but we're getting there. We appreciate all of you for being around.
Definitely.
And yeah, as we continue, we're going to continue growing. We're going to continue getting better. Don't forget, guys, and or always remember, whichever one you prefer. We do have a suggestions channel as well. That channel is for anything to do with how to improve our stream, how to improve the Discord. It could be anything from bots to channels to descriptions to
stuff you like
how
see.
how it looks, you know, how we do our cameras. Like, I mean, this is a new camera setup. I don't know if you guys like this one compared to the old one, but we really like this. I really do kind of like this more. I'm glad we don't have the bar anymore. I was really wanting to get rid
Right.
of that. That was very old Twitch, and I wasn't really happy. It wasn't really happening. It was going to be harder to make good YouTube content with that. So I like this for right now, but we do want your guys' input, right? We want this to be amenable to you guys. We want to look good. We want to sound good. We want you guys to be able to enjoy the stream outside of the content. So let us know what you guys think. And yeah, I think I've rambled a little bit too long for our outro. But that's all the updates I wanted to talk about. I think everything's good. That is going to be us for today. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for being in chat. Really appreciate it. Join the Discord if you want to give us your own homebrew. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you have a good week ahead of you. We will be back on Friday at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time for D&D discussions, our soon-to-be renamed deep dive. What is our topic? Oh, well, we know last week you were here, so we did background features. We did do background features last week. You're not here for Friday, though.
I will not be here this upcoming Friday.
All right. I don't have a topic off the top of my head. I do have a couple written in the background of the Discord, so I'll probably figure it out by Thursday. But yeah, I will see you all myself. It'll just be me on Friday for D&D discussions. Otherwise, if you do see me live, hop in chat, say hi real quick if I'm playing video games. And yeah, that'll be us. Have a great rest of your week, guys. Thank you so much.
Deuces, my friends.